Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a point of clarification. It's a bit technical, but I do believe it's very important for the proceedings today. Before we recessed, the committee voted unanimously to adopt an amendment by Mr. Gates that provided that nothing in the resolution shall require the Attorney General to break the law in complying with the subpoena. And a number of Democrats, including you, assured the committee your intent was not to force the Attorney General to disclose 6E material, which would, of course, be in violation of the law.
Without a court order.
Without a court order. So on April 3rd, this is the question, Mr. Buck offered an amendment to specifically exclude 6C material from the subpoena. And I have the amendment right here, and I'd ask unanimous consent to include that in the record.
Without objection.
Every Democrat voted against that amendment, and I have the vote tally right here as well, and I'd ask to include that in the record as well.
Without objection.
The amendment failed by a party line vote, 16 Republican yeas and 24 Democrat nays. This morning's vote changes nothing about the subpoena and the demands that are put on the Attorney General. The subpoena, as it stands today, requires the Attorney General to break the law to be fully compliant. If you look at it on its face, that's beyond dispute. I know that, and you know that, and yet you are nonetheless rushing to hold him in contempt. So despite your intent that the subpoena not require 6E material without a court order, that's what the subpoena you issued actually demands, if you read it on its face. You and every single Democrat member on this dais voted for that, and that's the danger that we're talking about today of moving forward so quickly on these things. So here's the question. I ask my good friends and colleagues on the other side, how do you explain today's sudden change of heart? Is it true that it is not your intent to force the AG to break the law by forcing him with your subpoena to disclose 6E material? And if that is your intent, that proves what every Republican on this dais has been saying all day. If it's not, then the subpoena you've issued is dangerously overbroad, and the question is, are you going to reissue a new subpoena? It's a change of heart that I think bears some clarification. I'll yield.
No, we're not going to issue a new subpoena. We have no intention and never had any intention of trying to force the Attorney General or anyone else to give us 6E material without going to court. We did want to, and we still do, want to follow the procedure that has been done in every similar case in the past of going to court, which we will do, to ask for 6E material and having the Attorney General go with us. The reason that was in the subpoena was to increase our clout in court in getting the 6E material, hopefully with the Attorney General's support, but in no way meant to force him to give that support.
Mr. Chairman, reclaim my time. The way I understand it, the Attorney General would be required to go to court to avoid the way the subpoena is written right now. Well, he would be required to go to court.
Yield.
I will yield. Yes, sir.
The subpoena is written as the beginning of a dialogue process, as the beginning of a process to talk to the Attorney General and to the Department of Justice, and ultimately to go to court. But it's designed to be the foundation of a dialogue and is not designed to force our hand in what we insist on in court.
And Mr. Chairman, the beginning of a dialogue, let me yield to Mr. Buck, if I may. Mr. Chairman.
Let me just point out.
Well, wait, this is my time, Mr. Chairman.
We have accepted the amendment today. We've stated the intent. I think that should take care of the matter. Go ahead.
This is a contempt proceeding. Let me yield to Mr. Buck.
Mr. Chairman, I've issued many subpoenas or requested the court to issue many subpoenas on behalf of prosecutors' offices that I've worked in. I've never considered it the beginning of a dialogue. I've considered it a command by the court to produce documents. We are now in a contempt proceeding, and I'm not sure whether you consider this the middle of a dialogue or the mid-beginning of a dialogue, but I consider this a pretty serious matter, as is issuing a subpoena from the Judiciary Committee. If it was a dialogue that you were interested in, and I understand that it's your position that you had attempted a dialogue for 2 months before the Department of Justice came to the table, but if it's a dialogue you're interested in, I believe there are other methods of going about that than a command from Congress to the administration to supply documents. And this is a far, far cry from anything other than one of the most serious matters that we will handle in the Judiciary Committee in the year 2019. So I would ask, and I thank the gentleman for yielding to me, but I would ask you to clarify exactly what we're doing here in contempt if this is part of a dialogue with the Attorney General.
And Mr. Chairman, just reclaiming my 6 seconds that I have left, in the letter this morning from the Department of Justice to you, he says, you've terminated our ongoing negotiations and abandoned the accommodation process. That's a dialogue. Why did you do this, and why are we here if this is part of the dialogue?
We didn't terminate. They did by refusing to make any offer in good faith. The gentlelady from Florida is recognized. For what purpose does the gentlelady from Florida seek recognition?
Thank you.